Make sure you're the first to watch Road to Cheltenham every week. You can do that by joining Racing TV. Go to racingtv.com/join to become a member and to see Road to Cheltenham as we go out live. Hi everyone, welcome to Road to Cheltenham. It's the third edition of the show and we've got loads to talk about this week. So to that end, let's go and join Ruby in his home over in Ireland. Ruby, how are you?
I'm great. Lydia, yourself?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. We've got lots to get through this week, so I'm going to get on with things. You know how it works, everybody at home. We have a wide-ranging discussion, an intelligent discussion about horse racing, and we're trying to pitch ahead to what horses might be able to achieve during the course of the season, not just at Cheltenham. So we're going to start by having a look at the 2-mile hurdlers, because there were significant developments over the weekend. We saw the return, first of all, of the champion hurdler, Epatante, Ruby, in the fighting fifth. Let's just look back on what she achieved in the champion hurdle last year.
She achieved a lot. Obviously, her jumping improved immensely last season. She was tight to the fourth last, but she was very quick, absolutely pinged the last. And watch as Barry Geraghty extends her. Every time he flicks her, she starts going faster on the Cheltenham run-in. So what do we learn about her? She's a brilliant jumper, she's loads of speed and she stays really well. And I think that was illustrated last weekend in Newcastle, Lydia, with the way she travelled behind Sceau Royale and the speed she had under Aidan Coleman. But it was her jumping that really impressed me last weekend. As much as it had improved last season, it seems to have improved again.
That's quite scary, isn't it? Because that was her major asset last season. But I agree with you, a bit like Bouvardere in his second full season hurdling. She seems to have got lower and quicker.
Oh, you wouldn't notice her getting off the ground, but that's the way good hurdlers should be. They should almost come back with orange on the front of their shins. They should be taking the top bar with her. And just look how low her girth or her belly is to the top of the hurdle. Like, she is wasting no time in the air. She's bending her knees. Her trajectory is so low. Bends in front and gets them back down so quick. It's what a real good hurdler should do, and she has learned to do it.
That's a shot from Dan Abraham during the fighting fifth last weekend, and she was so impressive that day, particularly the way in which she was weighted with going into the final hurdle. It was an odd little race, but the speed she showed to finish it off.
Yeah, and it's a brave shout to go to the last in any race. Like, Newcastle's not that long a run-in, and to go there a length and a half behind and hoping the last hurdle goes right for you. So it was a good ride by Aidan Coleman, but the turn of foot she showed from the back of the last was really impressive too. She's going to encounter better horses than Sceau Royale as the season moves on, but she's a worthy favourite.
We also saw another Cheltenham Festival winner make their seasonal debut over the weekend, another mare. This was Honeysuckle, and she, of course, won the Dave Nicholson Mares Hurdle in March, and she returned in the Hatton's Grace, Ruby.
Yeah, and it was a tactical race. They didn't go much of a gallop, and Rachel Blackmore, even though she sat second, really controlled the race. She quickened well to 2 out, but really quickened impressively from the back of that to the last hurdle, and she held off Beacon Edge, Ronald Pump and Bacardi's. Now, she just about hung on at the line, but you know, the second and third both had race fitness. The fourth horse was Bacardi's. He was 9 lengths behind her in this race last year. He was only 3.5 behind her this year. So it's hard to know with her, Lydia, but she keeps winning. She's a huge string of ones behind her name, and you can't really knock a horse that keeps doing that, can you?
It was more of the function of the pace, wasn't it? It was a crawl and then a sprint.
It was a stop-start race, and you know, Rachel controlled that because she didn't have fitness on her side, whereas Beacon Edge and Ronald Pump possibly did. It was Bacardi's first run of the season, so Rachel Blackmore got to control the race and do what she thought was the right thing, and it worked out.
Now, I've included Honeysuckle in this section because afterwards Henry de Bromhead and All Connections, Kenny Alexander, the owner, haven't completely counted out going for the champion hurdle. They said they wanted to support the Mares programme last season. They won the Mares hurdle and they've done that. It seems as though they might have an open mind for the champion hurdle this season, which would be absolutely great. If so, that would mean she'll be measuring up against Epatante. How would you compare them if you are thinking about them clashing over 2 miles?
It's a hard one, but I think what you'll see is that Epatante's jumping is slightly better than Honeysuckle. So watching Honeysuckle go into that hurdle, how Beacon Edge's head gets closer to her as they race to the jump. Now, Honeysuckle's jumping has improved, her technique has got good, but she does slow fractionally on the takeoff side, and I don't know if she have any advantage, let alone enough of an advantage to slow down on the approach to her hurdles, with Epatante coming right behind her.
So that's a consideration for her if she's going to move into the 2 mile division. She's doing so in the Irish Champion Hurdle. That's meant to be her next stop.
Yes, that's just the road she went last year. Having said that, Lydia, Fairyhouse was her second run last season. It was only her first run this season. So whether Henry de Bromhead will try and go to Cheltenham with 3 runs under her belt like he did last year or not, only time will tell. And whether she'll run at Christmas or not, it'll be a great addition to Leopardstown. But maybe he'll go straight to the Irish Champion Hurdle. But she did go to Cheltenham last year with 3 runs. This year, it might be looking like she might only go with 2.
Okay, that's the point of difference. Let's have a look at what else is in this division, shall we? There's Saldier. He won the Morgiana, but we haven't seen him since last November.
No, we haven't. He had an entry in the Hatton's Grace last weekend. He didn't run, but I'd imagine he'll run over Christmas. He's in full training. He's just very fragile. He's a huge engine, but he doesn't get to the track too often, but Christmas is the plan for him.
Yeah, he's only run once in each of the last 2 seasons. And then there's Song for someone who's coming up fast on the rails. He won the Kingwell at Kempton at the back end of last season, and he's come out with a better performance at Ascot.
I liked his performance in Ascot. I think Call Me Lord is a good yardstick. All right, Lorena Burston is retired since, but I like the way he quickened up in Ascot. You know, he gets a bit further, having won over 2 miles in 3. Champion hurdle horses have to stay, so he could be a dark horse, and he's definitely going in the right direction.
So are we talking about a very deep division here? I'm sort of thinking back to the past winners. For example, Bouvedere, who we're hoping we might yet see. He won twice in 27 and in 2018. Obviously, we haven't seen him since last year's Fighting Fifth, when unfortunately he got injured.
Exactly, and the signals from the yard are that he's making a good recovery, and he's getting closer to a run. Where that run is going to be, only time will tell. It's hard to see him being pitched into the Christmas hurdle against Epatante. I'd say that's absolutely no chance of that happening. So where he'll line up will be interesting. But he was a brilliant winner. But like any horse coming off the back of an injury, how much of their old ability they retain, that too is going to be, we'll have to wonder and see. We won't know that till he goes to the track.
Arguably more brilliant in 2017 than 2018?
Yeah, possibly. But look, all any horse can do is win the race in front of him. He beat Mellon in 2018. In 2017, when Noel Fairley rode him, he sprinted away from possibly a stronger field. I know Footpad was 4th. So Royale was 6th, I think.
Might enter yours second.
So yeah, maybe he was. Yeah. But what strength and depth? I mean, Istabrack was a brilliant hurdler, but he beat Theatre World a couple of times. Rock and Ruby, Hurricane Fly. Hurricane Fly beat Rock and Ruby beat Hurricane Fly beat Peddler's Cross. You only ever have 1 or 2 at the top of any division. I don't know about the strength and depth. You had obviously Brave Inca, Hardy Useless and Archibald, but do we ever have 4 real life contenders? I think you have 1, maybe 2, and a couple of hopefuls.
Yeah, I suppose what I was getting at is that I'm just feeling that this division is lacking some horses that might otherwise have been here. At the moment, I feel like it's Epatante, particularly with her £7 mare's allowance, and then the rest. And I'm looking to something to try and bridge that gap between the two. I mean, obviously we're missing Espoir d'Alan, sadly. The winner of the 2019, the brilliant winner of the 2019 Champion Hurdle, and sadly he's no longer with us.
Yeah, we are. But then you look at the supreme novice winners from years gone by. Obviously, Classical Dream went hurdling last year and got injured. Shishkin won it last year. He's going novice chasing. Envoy Allen won the Ballymore. He has chosen to go chasing. So unless your supreme or Ballymore winner stay hurdling, there is no fresh challenger to the champion hurdler. And then you also have to consider that we didn't have Punchestown, Aintree, Fairyhouse. So maybe there is a novice there that we're just overlooking that could have progressed at those meetings that we didn't get to see.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. I'm very grateful to Andrew Milo, who is the British Horse Racing Authority handicapper for this division. He's provided us with these tables, and it's very interesting in terms of looking at the strength and depth. And you'll notice that in 2019-20, there weren't any hurdlers rated 165 or above. And if you compare that to previous seasons, that is very unusual for to have nothing there. And I take your point about we haven't had clashes at the end of the season that we might normally have had, but Andrew was saying that generally you get those big performances at Cheltenham, not necessarily later on, albeit of course Goshen could have come out and done something special at Aintree.
Yeah, he could have. And if he'd stood up in the triumph hurdle, what sort of figure were you going to put on that? So, yeah, look, it's hard, but I don't think every generation can be expected to be as good as the one that went before it. You can only compete in the generation you're in.
Yes, absolutely. It's just, I just feel that there's an opportunity there, maybe for horses, for people who are moving their very good novice hurdlers into novice chasing, might be thinking about this category, 2 mile and 2 mile 2, as it has been since the 18-19 season. You know, that this is an opportunity for them.
Yeah, but Abacadabra and San Roy are going to stay hurdling. You know, Abacadabra was second in the Supreme. Shishkin has gone chasing. They think he's a chaser. Envoy Allen looks every bit a chaser and was bought to be a chaser. So they've stepped up. But who knows what will come along this year? Maybe next year we'll be sitting here thinking, wow, we have a Supreme and a Ballymore winner going to take on whatever won the champion hurdle. Everything is cyclical. The wheel goes round. The good ones will come back.
Well, let's hope so. Let's have a look at the division as it stands, shall we? Sharjah, runner-up in the champion hurdle, is 164. Aramon, who was second in the county hurdle and then put up an even better performance to win the Galway hurdle, is 163. Sadly, well, he's out for the season, isn't he? And then you've got Epatante and Honeysuckle, to whose ratings you have to add £7 because they've got the £7 mare's allowance in races.
Yeah, I never quite understand that one. How do you add the £7? So if they're running a handicap, they run off 162, but are they actually 155 horses, or are they 160? Is Epatante a 155 or a 169, or is she just 172? We're factoring in £7. I can never figure that one out. The handicappers have explained it to me, and I still can't manage to work it out.
I suppose it's to convey to everybody that, you know, Epatante, when she meets Sharjah, you know, was well on top of him, and yet he's rated £2 higher.
Yeah, that's what I don't get.
So, is this a deep division or not? Is there anything that's going to bridge the gap to Epatante?
I think she's head and shoulders. The rest have to catch up to her, but we're early in the season, and one of a lot of horses that we've mentioned could catch up to her. But if you were offering me one to own, ride or train right now for the champion hurdle, it would be Epatante. Okay.
Right. Let's move on, shall we, to the social media and what you've been saying during the past week. And some of you are wanting to discuss the mare's allowance. Certainly Sean Moss is. You can take a look at what he had to say. Now, Sean, you and I are going to have a conversation about the use of the word effectively and in effect, but I'll overlook it for now. So now there is, in effect, a mare's champion hurdle and champion chase. Is it time to remove the £7 mare's allowance, Ruby?
Sean, that was an absolute schoolboy error when you're dealing with Lydia to do something like that. How could you? Is it time to remove the £7 mare's allowance? I don't honestly know, Lydia. And I think if you look back through history, Glencarrick Lady, when she won the Gold Cup, had no allowance. Dawn Run, when she won it, had a £5 allowance. The allowance was brought in for the market to make mares more valuable and as a racehorse, and to encourage people to race racehorses to give them a better chance. It's to do with the markets. It was never really a racing thing. It was to do with the value of horses and the whole industry that goes on behind. Is £7 too much? It quite possibly is. Has the mare's hurdle and will the mare's chase affect the champion hurdle, the Gold Cup and the champion chase? I'm not sure it does. I think it has a bigger impact on maybe the Ryanair or the Stayers hurdle, but I'm not sure do those races have a huge impact on the three other championship races in Cheltenham, and should it be £5 rather than 7? For the very good ones it possibly should, but there are plenty of mares that you can give a £7 allowance to that could do with 17.
Yeah, the lower down the rankings you get, the more they need that allowance. The very, very good mares, even on the flat as well, probably don't need what they get. And it's just about where you're going to draw the line. I'd also be concerned about ended up getting segregated racings if you remove the allowance. You know, that you just have geldings racing against geldings and mares never trying to race against them. Let's move on to the next piece of social media, shall we? Now, you can tell me about this, Ruby. This is from The Racing Man, and he says, I picked out Hook Up at 50 to 1, count it, for the mare's novice hurdle back in July. Could you ask Ruby how far she wins the mare's novices hurdle by the Dawn Run, and should she be renamed Hoses Up rather than Hook Up?
I hope you're right, racing man. But she was disappointing in last year's Triumph hurdle. She has improved. She was really impressive in a maiden hurdle last week in Fairyhouse. But she will have plenty of opposition, and a lot of that opposition could even be housed in her own stable.
Absolutely. And it was a change of tactics here as well.
It was a maiden hurdle. You were always going to get a change of tactics. She was ridden from the front. Her 2 runs before that, one had been in a graded hurdle on her first start, and the other was a Triumph hurdle. So dropping down in grade, you're probably always going to get a change in tactics. I don't necessarily think she has to make the run.
Okay, now you mentioned the threats in her own yard. There are 3 that I've picked out for now. I'm sure there'll be, 6, 7, 8 more as the season progresses. The She Wears It Well, who I'm particularly fond of because I love the way she hurdles. Finest Evermore, who won at Listowel, and her jumping got better as she went along. And Gauloise, who won at Thurles recently.
Yeah, Galwaz was good in Thurles. Finest Evermore, I think she might run at the weekend in Punchestown. She could actually want a little bit further, Lydia, and whether 2 miles will be a bit sharp for her in Cheltenham, only time will tell. And She Wears It Well, that was a rock solid performance in Tipperary. I think when you look at the ratings of that, she ran somewhere in the 150s or in or around 150. She picked up a small injury, but nothing that's going to stop her making Cheltenham. So yeah, look, if you were pushing me right now, I'd probably be in the same camp as you, and She Wears It Well.
Yeah, she jumps so well. I was worried about her missing the Royal Bond because Willie was going to test the waters there, but you say she's going to recover from the small setback she's had fine?
Yeah, she will be, yeah. She'll be grand.
Okay. Right. Next bit to talk about is about Cloth Cap, and he of course won the Ladbrokes Trophy with a swashbuckling performance under Tom Scudamore at the weekend. Alan Sladen says, seeing Cloth Cap jump like that is why I love jumps racing. I hear you, Alan. And also Steve Harris has to say, it wasn't just the jumping, was it? It's what he had left at the end. What did you make, Ruby, of Cloth Cap?
I think his jumping had a hell of a lot to do with what he had left at the end, to be honest with you. The first 10 fences, Lydia, he met them all in a perfect stride and made ground. And look at him, the distance from him to the horses behind him. It's his speed through the air. He got tight at the 13th and 15th fences. But look how the distance he puts between himself and those behind him who are jumping really well. His power through the air. He never gets overly high. He's a low trajectory. His jumping was brilliant. He got a great ride. Tom Scudamore was very positive on him, and he's absolutely hosed up. He looks like a national horse to me, a Grand National horse, an entry horse. He's low, he's fast, he likes quick, nice ground. It was a really, really good performance. It
was a really exhilarating performance. I doffed my cap as well to I Wright, who was giving him weight and ran really well in second for Harriet Graham. But the winner, John Joe Neal was saying, he's owned by Trevor Hemmings, the Grand National is the obvious thing. He's not that big, but Tiger Roll isn't that big.
No, but not that big. John Joe be hoping he probably has somewhere around 11 stone or less, more so than anything else. Because the way he jumps, I don't think it's the fences that are going to bother him.
No, he's a fantastic horse. Right, and talking of fantastic horses, a cult hero of mine. Here is Yorkhill. Dave Armstrong, one of his owners, tweeted after his success in the rehearsal chase at Newcastle at the weekend, the King of the North, enjoying his field time this morning. Yorkhill. And Thomas Austin also has to say, my banker at Cheltenham a few years back. That was in the JLT now. Marsh and a certain Ruby Walsh was on board. He was holding off top notch. Great to see him from the front, jumping like a buck. Nothing was going by him yesterday. I just hope the next time they jump him out in the front again. He might need something else as well. There's something about Newcastle that helps a certain old Yorkhill.
Yeah, I think it does, and it's left-handed track with a running rail on the inside all the way. It makes a big difference when you're riding Yorkhill. That Marsh or JLT chase was run on the new course in Cheltenham. He'd a running rail on his inside as well. He's definitely an easier horse to ride with a rail down his inside. So I don't know, Newcastle, Doncaster, Aintree, the new course in Cheltenham, Ayr, they're all possibilities for him, but he needs a track where the chase track's on the inside that's left-handed.
And if we just remember, that's because he sort of lurches out to the left, doesn't he, on landing?
He does, and even like he was, the race in Newcastle worked for him. The challenger that was taking him on fell and he got left in front, but in a competitive race to try and settle him or hold him, it's much easier with a running rail on his inside where you can't get you can actually use your two hands. You're not just riding him with one rein. You're not trying to steer him and hold him. You can actually do both.
It must have warmed your heart, though, to see him back to form and winning in the rehearsal.
I can't believe I let Yorkhill run in any race at 66-1 without even having a euro on him.
Is that because he's got so much innate talent?
Yeah, I thought he was a Gold Cup horse. But look, he had his issues, he had his difficulties. He won last year, I think, in Clonmel, was it? That's going right-handed, or no, Paul won him somewhere, I can't remember, Galway. And yeah, he just has an awful lot of ability, but getting it out of him can be difficult at times, and it was a great bit of training and placing, and he delivered on Saturday.
Absolutely. The rehearsal chase's gain. Our gain is the loss to psychiatry. Okay, we're going to move on, and we found a live one for you. We're looking at Fairyhouse at the weekend, and we've got one of those three-way split screens. Ruby is going to talk you through it. It's Zanahiyr at the top in the juvenile hurdle, bottom left to Ballyadam in the Royal Bond, bottom right to Advance Virgo in the handicap hurdle, all over the same course and distance.
Yeah, all over the same course and distance. Now, we've played this from the time Joe Banahan, the starter, drops his flag. Obviously, Ballyadam's race stalled for about a second or a second and a half, so that puts them a little bit behind anyway, but it becomes way more noticeable as we get on. So Advance Virgo and Zanahiyr jumped the first hurdle, not that far apart. By the time they get to the second, it's still quite the same. The handicap's just in front of the 3-year-old hurdle, and the novice hurdle at the very bottom, Ballyadam in the left-hand side, is well behind. When we play it on past the stands as they climb up towards Ballyhack and get to the third hurdle, you'll see that Zanahiyr, from being factually behind Advanced Virgo, has taken over. And that's probably the difference in graded horses and handicappers. Graded horses do keep going through the middle of a race, whereas handicappers do need to slow a little bit to make sure they're finished. But the juvenile hurdle was run at a really strong pace. Now, the handicappers had to jump the 5th hurdle. The juveniles and the novices both bypassed it because of low-lying sun. Zanahiyr's gone round it. Advanced Virgo is just coming to jump it now. But if you look in your left-hand corner, Ballyadam's race is only coming to the bypassed hurdle now. So from here on, we're going to put a clock on it. At the third last hurdle, Zanahiyr is going to jump. He takes off. Now, look how far behind Advanced Virgo has gotten at this stage. It's up to 5.13 seconds. Look how far behind Ballyadam is.
That's really
over
marked.
13 seconds. It's huge. That's the difference from Zanahiyr to Ballyadam's race. Allow them a second at the start, or a second and a half. That still puts them a long way behind. To 2 out, Zanahiyr jumps it. Has Advanced Virgo closed it down at all? Only by 0.08 of a second. Whereas Ballyadam's race, they've reduced it by nearly 2 seconds. So Ballyadam ran 2 seconds quicker from 3 out to 2 out than Zanahiyr. And you're thinking the novice hurdle is picking up, so he's going to be quicker again to the last hurdle. But actually, he's not. Zanahiyr jumps it. Advanced Virgo's coming. He's still over 5 seconds behind. Ballyadam had reduced it down to 11.17. It's only 11. It's only 17 hundredths of a second quicker between the second last and the last, and Zanahiyr was, and Zanahiyr's gone by the line. Does Ballyadam or Advanced Virgo close that down from the last to the line? No, they don't. Advanced Virgo has lost ground. Ballyadam has lost a bit too. So Zanahiyr was quickest from the last to the line. He was by far the quickest from the start to the third last, and overall his was the best performance. Now, the novice hurdle was stop-start. You'll say Ballyadam has done well for a national hunt horse to win such a tactical race. Handicappers are handicappers. They've run a decent contest. But the juvenile, from my mind, juveniles shouldn't be able to outrun older novices. And they most certainly did. He is a real one.
I absolutely agree, and it's interesting you mentioned that Ballyadam was sort of a national hunt type horse. Zanahiyr was specifically bought with a view to being that kind of top-class 2-mile hurdler, and also being able to mix it in the best meetings on the flat during the course of the year. Yeah,
he was, and it was nice that, I suppose, the jumping game managed to get one that the Australians didn't rob for the Melbourne Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, he is very, very smart indeed. His trainer, Gordon Elliott, was talking about seeing him maybe once, either at Christmas or in the spring hurdle at the Dublin Racing Festival before heading to the Triumph Hurdle. For me, he's head and shoulders the best at the moment.
I would have to agree with you, and it depends what Gordon does, because he looks to have the opposition as well. But I'd imagine he'll have to carry a penalty at Christmas, because the race in Leopardstown at Christmas is only a grade 2. Have to win in that grade 3. He'll have a penalty in that. Whereas if he goes to the Dublin Racing Festival being a grade 1, he's back on levels with everything. So, the obvious thing would look to Dublin Racing Festival, but Gordon has plenty of juveniles, so maybe he'll split them up differently. But look, Zanahiyr is a name on lots of people's shortlist, and he's most certainly on mine.
Absolutely. Well, you're reading my mind on 2 counts. First of all, let's have a look at what else Gordon has got, because he trains 2 of these, Quilixios, Dufflecoat and Eumdor. Quilixios won at Down Royal last time. Dufflecoat's won 4 times unbeaten, and this is his grade 2 success at Cheltenham. And Eumdor was a comfortable winner at Goran. I'm particularly interested in Quilixios. We haven't seen him since that win in October, but afterwards Gordon Elliott did say, I'll imagine he'll go straight to Christmas. So you'd think that maybe that's the way he's going to juggle Quilixios and Zanahiyr?
Well, if you were Gordon Elliott, that's what you'd be trying to do. Of course you would. Keep them apart as long as you can. They will eventually have to meet in the Triumph Hurdle, but if you can mop everything else up on the way, fair play to him. So yeah, Quilixios would look the obvious one for the grade 2 at Leopardstown. I'd imagine that's where Eumdor is going to go. Have to win in his maiden in Goran, which is a pretty weak contest, but you can't do any more than win a race. And Dufflecoat, he looks like a real stayer to me. He never looked like winning in Cheltenham. Well, not through the race anyway. He did from the last hurdle home, but he looks like a really strong stayer. A Triumph may suit, but I think he has to find a bit of pace somewhere to cope with the others.
Eumdor is Willie's. St Sam, who was only brushed aside by Zanahiyr 2 out on his debut for the yard at the weekend, and I think he might be disproportionately overlooked. Does Willie Mullins have anything else?
We have a few more. We've one in on Sunday, a horse called Hador in Cork, and there's a couple of more juveniles. Willie would traditionally be Christmas onwards with his juvenile hurdler, so St Sam being a juvenile winner, you can't run him in a maiden obviously, so Fairyhouse fitted in for him, and he should improve for that run, but he has to improve a bit, I think.
Absolutely. So I've gone with Zanahiyr. It's the first bet in the Road to Cheltenham column of the season. 5-1 for the JCB Triumph Hurdle. Now, I know he's become a bit of a wise guy horse since people have crunched the numbers. He was available at 8 immediately after winning at Fairyhouse. I still think 5s is fair enough for a performance of that level, which is good enough to be involved in the Triumph Hurdle right now, and it was then only November. Right, next to the Instagram even, poll results. And Ruby, it's another victory. You've been elected for a 2nd term, yet another landslide. The question was, will Clandezobo bounce back from his hard run at Haydock and win the King George? 67% of people agree with you. He must be a bet at 9-4.
Possibly, yeah. Well, no, because what's he going to start on the day? He's probably going to be a 9-4 shot when you actually know he's at the start in the King George. So anti-post, would I back him? No, but I think he's the most likely winner.
Okay, I'm not going to let you win 3 in a row. You know, that's just not happening.
I will.
He probably will. He probably will. I mean, right. Okay, another one that we're going to discuss in terms of a clock performance that might have gone slightly under the radar. And this is at Newbury last Friday. And we've got Caribbean Boy, who was running in a novice on this occasion, but will no longer be qualified from novices, has no longer been qualified since from the 1st of December onwards. He's being accompanied there by Fiddler on the Roof, and behind him Getaway Trump. And on the right-hand side, we've got Clondor Castle. In this Caribbean Boy, on the left was carrying 11-1, Clondor Castle 11-8, and Clondor Castle at this time was rated 151. And comparatively, Caribbean Boy puts up the better performance, Ruby.
Yeah, he does, Lydia, and I didn't cop it on the day, and it's only when we were discussing this yesterday that I started looking at it. But you saw for the first half of the race how Caribbean Boy was behind Clondor Castle's race, but on the second circuit they've gotten to the front, and the further they go, the further in front they were getting even. I think it was a really good performance from Caribbean Boy. I was taken on the day by his jumping. He's a brilliant jumper, but I think I have to mark up Fiddler on the Roof for this performance. And when you start to up the ante in the middle of a race and really go like these 2 horses did, Fiddler on the Roof and Caribbean Boy, it does bring stamina into play. And these 2 horses had a good test, and I think I'd be marking Fiddler on the Roof up. Does he go up and trip to an RSA, or will he stay at 2.5 to take on the likes of Envoy Allen? Only time will tell, but I'd say it was a really good race. Caribbean Boy, as you say, where does he go? Is he a Ryanair horse? Is he a Melling Chase horse? Will they go up and trip with him altogether? Who knows? But I think it was a really good... I didn't think it watching it, but Caribbean Boy and Fiddler on the Roof's race was a better race than I thought it was.
Absolutely, which is why we're discussing it here. I agree with you about Fiddler on the Roof. I know he got beaten there, but I think it's by far his most substantial performance yet and his most convincing over fences. Afterwards, the British handicapper has reacted by putting Clondalk Castle up to 155 and Caribbean Boy up to 154. And really, you could have gone a lot higher on that performance if you wanted to. He's entered in the Caspian Caviar Gold Cup, and unfortunately it seems, I mean, Nicky Henderson said immediately afterwards he thinks it might come a little bit too soon. Darryl Jacob has since said in his column on sportinglife.com that they're aiming for the Ascot graduation chase, but they are talking in terms of the Ryanair, and I think on that performance that's quite right.
It's definitely going in the right direction. Definitely going in the right direction. I'm surprised by the handicapper, to tell you the truth. I am surprised. I think the novice race was a better race, and maybe that's why novices win handicaps and handicappers don't, because they're all too high.
I suppose he's got to take account of the large amount of form he's got to deal with Clondalk Castle, and the fact it was just a 3-runner race. I suppose those two factors might be bearing in mind, but you know, I think there was an option there to go higher. Anyway, a name to remember, Caribbean Boy. Watch him in the graduation chase at Ascot, and also bear him in mind for the Ryanair. Right, time now for the viewers' question, and the question this week comes from Dan Kelly. Dan, thank you very much for your question. Take the floor.
Hi there, just a couple of questions on Monkfish's debut at Fairyhouse last week. Post-race, Paul Townend said that the only semblance of mistake came at the open ditch, and would Monkfish have come across the ditch at home or in point-to-point? And also the mistake itself, would this actually put you off going forward, or would you just hope to see that he corrects it next time round?
Great question, Dan. I think we're all going to learn something here. Ruby?
I didn't really think it was that much of a mistake. I think Paul Townend actually sends Monkfish at the ditch, and they're not open ditches anymore. There are no more ditches in front of the fences. The takeoff board is different. He just puts down but never touches the twig. Now there's no middle guide rail on a ditch. You see him at the second one? Jumped in much better. So there's no middle rail on a ditch anymore, and the takeoff board is slightly higher, but there's no actual ditch. The ditches have all been filled in a long time ago. I can remember riding over open ditches, but it's quite a while ago, and I asked around in Willie's this morning, and none of the jockeys riding now can remember riding over an actual open ditch where it was a full drain in front of the fence. They've all been taken away. So ditches now, it's basically a fence without a middle rail.
And is that the only point of difference, really?
Basically, the takeoff board could be slightly taller on some than others, but you wouldn't pass heed on a ditch anymore compared to many years ago when there was a proper drain in front of the fence and they rode much differently. But now it's just a fence with no middle rail and a slightly higher takeoff board, but they don't tend to cause the problems they used to.
And that's presumably the safety analysis. Horse racing does quite rigorous analysis of what happens when there are mistakes and falls, and makes modifications as a result of that?
Yes, definitely. Horses used to, when they would take off and their ditch would come into their eye line, would freeze and drop their hind end into the old drain, and therefore they would land with their belly on the fence. I don't think it's a bad thing that the open ditch is gone. Absolutely,
a definite improvement. And Monkfish, just a thought about him. It was a very pleasing opening bid, wasn't it, over fences?
I'd have said so, and I thought he jumped really well, he travelled really well, he won as he liked. Where he goes, probably somewhere at Christmas, but look, I think the Albert Bartlett's working out really well. We'll see that later in the show with Thyme Hill. We've already seen it with Fury Road. This exhibition is 1 from 2. So as a novice hurdler, it's working out really well. So it was a really pleasing start for Monkfish.
OK, let's go back to the hurdlers. This time we're looking at the staying hurdlers. There was a significant race at the weekend on Friday at Newbury, the long distance hurdle. It was won by Thyme Hill, who was running for the first time in Oak and Company, graduating from a novice.
Yeah, and I thought he won really well. It was a stop-start race. I suppose if you're cribbing him, it's the way he raced in the first sort of half a mile where he raced really keenly. Stayers don't really want to do that. Paisley Park, who finished second here, he has the perfect way for Stayers to race. He always races behind the bridle, whereas Thyme Hill raced on the bridle. Having said that, Thyme Hill is a bit younger. It was his first run of the season. He's entitled to be a bit fresh, but I thought it was a really good performance. Now, I know he got a weight allowance, and Paisley Park's coming back from a heart problem, but I think both horses will improve, and I think it's a very competitive division.
I totally agree. Do you think McFabulous didn't quite stay, or do you think initially he was caught out in a sprint?
No, I just think he didn't stay. I thought he travelled as well as anything. Harry Cobden got him in a great position going to the third last hurdle. I just think ultimately he didn't stay. Stayers have to be dogged and hard, and I think McFabulous is a bit flashy for that. I think at 2.5 miles you could win a lot of races this season, and I think ultimately he'll make a nice chaser, but I just don't think he's enough of a slogger for a Stayers hurdle.
I wanted to see how the race was run. You mentioned the stop-start pace. So we've teed it up against the course and distance handicap hurdle that was run later. And Lil Rockefeller, who goes out in front of the Hill 16 race on the right-hand side. Lil Rockefeller almost makes all. He's just caught by Hill 16. And it just compares with how the race is run with the long-distance hurdle. And we've started them off where they actually moved in the long-distance hurdle as opposed to the 2.5 hours that they stood at the start.
Yeah, well, nobody broke any rule, Lydia. You don't have to. There's no rule about how fast you have to go in a race once you approach the start. And you see how far the handicappers were in front of the graded horses, but just look how much the graded horses run them down and eventually catch up on them. It was a really good run from Thyme Hill, Paisley Park. I must say I was shouting for Lil Rockefeller. I chinned him in a Stayers hurdle many years ago, and I think he's a wonderful horse. But at Thyme Hill, from being so far behind on the first clip, ends up nearly beside Hill 16. I think they're a good bunch of Stayers, and that was a competitive race.
Yes, I think the circumstances of the race would have disadvantaged Paisley Park. Thyme Hill has run well in an Albert Bartlett. Again, the emphasis was more on speed that day, and run well there where the emphasis was a bit more on speed. Let's have a look at Paisley Park winning the Stayers hurdle a couple of seasons ago. Now, this horse likes an end-to-end gallop, does respond to it.
He does. Sam Spinner, Faheen, Super Sunday, but again it was his turn of foot in this race, Lydia, from the home turn to now. He quickened up and mowed down some pretty decent horses in a matter of strides. Has a look at the last, he backs off and has a little guess at that, but watch him again, how he's able to change gear and run away from Sam Spinner. I don't think Paisley Park is a slow horse under any manner of means. I wasn't in Newbury. I don't know how fit he was, how wound up he was for the race. I think he's a lazy horse, but I don't think he's a slow horse.
Yeah, he just made a mistake as they started to quicken at the third last.
He did make a little bit of a mistake, and Thyme Hill was in the right place every step of the way. Richard Johnson, when no one wanted to jump off, elected to sit on the front end of it, and a bit like Rachel Blackmore and Honeysuckle, Richard Johnson was pretty much in control of that hurdle race in Newbury. I know Robert Power got run away with it in the middle of the race, but that didn't bother Richard Johnson. He didn't go chasing him down. He rode the race to suit himself, and ultimately he was in the right place.
Absolutely. Lisnagar Oscar, who won the Stayers Hurdle last season, a really attritionally run Stayers Hurdle thanks to Apple's Jade. He travelled into the race on Friday quite well and then ended up being beaten quite a long way. He
was, and he'd run in Wetherby, so he had the benefit of a run under his belt going to Newbury, but Lisnagar Oscar's a very good horse, just catching him on the right day. And he didn't start the price he did in last year's Paddy Power Stayers hurdle because of the form he had. He has the ability, but he can be in and out. He's not one you can rule out.
No.
But he's probably not one you can be backing either.
His ins do tend to be Cheltenham as well. He was fifth in a very good Albert Bartlett. He has won a Stayers hurdle.
Exactly. And that's the day that will count for connections.
Yeah. And similar comments apply to Sire du Berlay, albeit he's already come out and won this season. That was a good performance, but he's twice won the Patemps over the Stayers hurdle course and distance.
He has, and I, without looking back, didn't think, there's a Stayers hurdle winner in waiting. I thought he got a brilliant ride in 2019 to win the Patemps, and Davy Russell and Barry Geraghty virtually marked each other in that renewal of the Patemps and arrived at the last together, and Sire du Berlay outstayed the storyteller. He actually took my eye in the Lismullen hurdle this year. I thought back at 2.5, there's no way I thought he was too slow for 2.5 miles. Mark Walsh rode him, but he quickened up really sharply into Lismullen, had the beating of Ronald Pump, and Ronald Pump fell at the last. They were both first time out. We saw what Ronald Pump did last Sunday when chasing down Honeysuckle, so from not considering him, I think he is now a Stayers hurdle horse, Thyre de Burley.
Yeah, I agree. He shouldered his way into consideration. Let's have a look at some of the key potential runners in this division and what they've been doing lately. We can have a look at what the official rating is currently. And I've Gordon Markham here from the British Horse Racing Authority has been the official handicapper for this division, has been really helpful talking about this. So the official rating, what they're currently rated on the left-hand side. Sire de Burley for the international, the Anglo-Irish classifications, they agreed 160, but he's currently 158 in Ireland. But you can see with the March figure that they agreed 160. The point I'm trying to make is you have to go all the way to the right-hand screen to find a performance from Paisley Park, which is much above what Thyme Hill, Lisnagar Oscar and Sire de Burley have all achieved lately. Now, I know he's had an issue with his heart, which hopefully has been put right, and that accounts for the Stayers Hurdle 147. But January 158, November 19 162, it's the previous season we're looking at where he gets that current ranking that he's got. It
is, and I don't know, but I love the trajectory that Thyme Hill is on. This time last year, 147, 150, 151, 160. I love improvers and horses that are getting better, and the one horse on that screen, maybe Sire de Burley as well, is Thyme Hill. Well, we'll have a look at him in the Albert Bartlett in a moment. We're just going to have a quick comparison between Sire de Burley and Lisnagar Oscar. I just want to get to how differently the Pertemps and the Stayers Hurdle were run at this festival last season. I would be hoping so, Lydia. I mean, whatever way you look at it, the Pertemps is a handicap, the Stayers Hurdle is a grade 1, Apples Jade went a really good gallop. You would think the middle of the Stayers Hurdle, where they should be able to sustain a really high pace, is where you will find the difference. Apples Jade has jumped the last, pretty much was stuck at the race in the same position as the handicappers. She's just about in front of them here. Here come the rest of the field. So, like, they're 2/3 the way back in the Stayers field, down the hill to, where are we now? 2 out. And the Pertemps has caught up and gotten ahead. So this only backs up your thinking, what sort of a Stayers Hurdle was it? At the last, Storyteller, Petty, Sire de Burley, Lisnagar Oscar has closed them down. I mean, the more you watch this split screen, the more you think, God, Sire de Burley and the Storyteller should have been in the Stayers Hurdle. I'm going to speak slightly in defence of the Stayers Hurdle. Because of Apples Jade, because of the class she was, she dragged the rest of the field through fractions that were really, really attritional. They couldn't afford to leave her alone. She's Apples Jade. So they ended up going a bit too fast. So they're slowing down because of how much they've done in the middle part of the race, whereas Sire de Burley has been able to use his energy much more effectively. Yes, I'd agree with you, but that's the way genuine grade 1 horses race. That's what you expect of a Gold Cup, of a champion hurdle, of a champion chase. That is the way I always wanted the Stayers Hurdle to be run for big bucks, because the cream will just rise to the top as the rest start to fall out the back of the race. That's what I would expect of a grade 1 race. So I don't know, Lydia, but the more you look at that, the more I'm looking at what's coming on. It's last year's Albert Bartlett horses. It's that Pertemps form. They'll be the horses counting in this year's Stayers Hurdle. Yeah, the Pertemps form still stacks up as better, even if you make those allowances that I've made for Lisnagar Oscar. The Albert Bartlett, though, the winner Monkfish has gone chasing, the second latest exhibition chasing. The third Fury Road is still around, and he's come back with a victory in a shallow race last time, and Thyme Hill finished 4th. Yeah, and look, so much was made of Thyme Hill's unlucky run from the home turn to the last hurdle, and from the last hurdle to the line, and Richard Johnson's body language would suggest, as he crosses the line here, what it cost him, but also the way the race was run. The Albert Bartlett wasn't run in from end, and Thyme Hill was held up at the back on the outside to get him to switch off. Now, when you watched him in Newbury last week, you could see why Richard Johnson dropped him in to get him to settle. So that is something he will have to work on, how he settles. But because the race wasn't run that strong, Thyme Hill ended up quite wide and a long way back with a lot of ground to make up in the middle of the race. So I think he ran an outstanding race in last year's Albert Bartlett, and I'd still be a massive fan of the horse. Bring Apples Jade out of retirement. She'll ensure it's strongly run. She will, but something will come along. There was nothing, of course, in Newbury last week. Sprint won't suit Sire de Burley, so something will crop up. Somebody will make the running.
Yeah, this race benefits from great analysis. I really enjoyed your thoughts on that and all the way through the show, Ruby. Thank you very much. Thank you very much at home for watching. We bring to an end this edition of Road to Cheltenham. If you're thirsty for more, go to the Racing TV website, racingtv.com/road to Cheltenham. You can read my latest column there, and you can always find the back columns via that route as well. Thank you for watching. See you next week.
At Racing TV, 100% of our profits go back into racing. Thank you for supporting the sport that we all know and love.